The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy stretched farther than any memory could hold, a cathedral of polished alloy and floating hollow panels. Hundreds of cadets sat in precise tiers, their forms alien and unrecognizable to one another, yet unified in confidence. They whispered in clicks, gurgles, and hums, a symphony of species certain that this was the day they would witness a simple lesson in planetary science. The instructor, a figure of sleek bioluminescent sinew, activated the main projection. The air shimmered. Suddenly, simulations filled the hall, storm systems the size of moons, gravity wells crushing entire cities under relentless pressure, tectonic plates tearing landscapes apart, oceans boiling and freezing in unpredictable cycles. Cadets leaned in, eager to witness nature's indiscriminate wrath on worlds deemed uninhabitable. Earth. The word itself rippled across alien minds. Most species had heard of the planet, but only from distant probe reports, never in full clarity, and the projections made their horror tangible. Gravity far stronger than any colony world, weather systems that could obliterate settlements in minutes, predators whose predatory design had been honed over millions of cycles, disease vectors that evolved faster than containment protocols. No species here could survive for more than one planetary cycle, the professor continued, gesturing to a simulation of a tidal wave swallowing entire continents in a single heartbeat. Lightning tore forests to ash, predators ripped each other apart, and airborne pathogens twisted the air into lethal storms. The aliens shivered, their appendages twitching nervously. The verdict was unanimous. Every cadet in the room, from the smallest bioluminescent scholar to the towering gravity-adapted veterans, nodded in agreement. Survival on this planet was impossible. And yet, the lecture hall held a presence the professor had not anticipated. Front row. Amid the symphony of alien chatter, a single human cadet sat silently. No neon glow, no exoskeletal armor, no antennae quivering in the projected wind. Just a human, bare, ordinary, unimposing. The camera of my mind, or perhaps the instructor's sensors, focused. Something about the stillness was wrong. Was he observing? A research assistant? Perhaps a curiosity imported for study? None dared interrupt, unsure whether the human belonged or had been accidentally admitted. Then, with a quiet confidence that broke the rhythm of the hall, the human raised his hand. A simple gesture. No flourish, no signaling device, no attempt to draw attention. Just a hand. "I grew up there," he said. The words struck like a gravitational shockwave. Silence fell. Not the silence of attention, but the deeper, trembling silence of disbelief. The cadets widened, tentacles twitched, antennae retracted. The projection panels faltered under the collective pause. He did not explain further. He did not elaborate on survival strategies or feats. Just Earth.
And him. Alive. For a moment, the room could not reconcile the data with reality. The death world, the planet of storms, predators, disease, and impossible gravity, was his home. The instructor blinked bioluminescently, a nervous habit of those unprepared for anomalies. The simulations continued to churn, continents ripped apart, lightning struck cities, waves engulfed forests. But now these horrors were no longer theoretical. They had a witness, someone who had experienced them and had survived. A cadet from the upper tier, tentacles shaking, whispered a question that all had been thinking, but none dared say aloud. The human simply shrugged, as if the question itself were quaint, almost amusing. "I grew up there," he repeated. No tremor, no pride, just a statement of fact, like describing a hometown or a favorite meal. The alien narrator in me recorded every detail, the cadet's disbelief, the shifting tension in the room, the subtle way the atmosphere seemed to bend around this anomaly. The simulation of destruction continued relentlessly, yet here was a species that had not merely survived, it had mastered it, or at least endured it long enough to sit in silence while the galaxy gaped. The room had expected a lecture in futility, a confirmation that no cadet could withstand Earth. Instead, they were confronted with the first evidence of something else, a species that treated catastrophic danger as merely ordinary life. I noted the reactions, the cadets staring at the human, measuring, calculating, trying to reconcile probability with proof. Even the instructor, whose data had never failed him, froze in cognitive dissonance. What they thought was uninhabitable was merely a training ground for a species that had evolved not to flee danger, but to exist within it. And the human, quiet and unassuming, held the room in suspense, offering no answers, only presence. For the alien mind, it was an awakening, the kind that begins quietly, then spreads into the marrow of understanding. Perhaps the galaxy had misjudged humans entirely. Perhaps all their metrics, their simulations, their statistical certainties were flawed. The lecture hall remained frozen, the projections flickering as if the universe itself hesitated. And then the human leaned back, eyes scanning the hall with calm familiarity, as if he had never been in danger at all. The implications began to seep in. This was no anomaly. This was a pattern. This was humanity. And none of them, none of the thousands of cadets, none of the instructors, yet understood the consequences of that truth. The galaxy had assumed Earth was a death world. Earth had assumed humans were ordinary. And the first seed of fear, awe, and curiosity began to germinate. What happens when a species designed by chaos itself meets a galaxy that believes it cannot survive? The hall waited, suspended in breathless anticipation. And so did I. The story was just beginning.
This section ends with maximum suspense and sets up the next reveal about how humans defy impossible odds. The archives of the Galactic Council are vast beyond comprehension, a lattice of memory spanning countless civilizations and millennia. I drifted through the data streams, my sensors brushing against recorded histories, ecological surveys, and long-abandoned probe footage. And there it was, Earth, a world catalogued centuries ago, yet largely ignored. Its gravity a cruel exaggeration, its weather a violent chorus, its biosphere a battlefield of endless competition. Early probes had mapped its continents, orbiting silently as their instruments quivered under unpredictable solar storms. The reports were clear. Earth should not, could not, support intelligent life. Statistical analyses poured over the data, modeling every conceivable outcome. The verdict was unanimous. Extinction guaranteed. Any species attempting to evolve here would be eradicated before it could even comprehend its own mortality. Gravity far above the galactic median, atmospheric storms that ripped through forests and flattened mountains, heat that could melt steel and frost that could shatter stone, oceans churned with creatures that could crush starships, volcanoes tore continents into molten veins, predators hunted relentlessly, immune to exhaustion, disease, or reason. Even the microorganisms were lethal, evolving faster than any containment protocol could track. Most planets in the galaxy followed a pattern: stability, predictable ecosystems, species that grew in balance with their environment. But Earth was war incarnate. Every niche a battlefield, every organism a combatant. Adapt or perish, adapt quickly or be erased. Yet, amid the relentless chaos, something anomalous appeared in the data. Cities, networks of structures spanning entire continents, towers reaching into the sky like defiance incarnate. Satellite arrays orbiting as if the planet's storms and gravity were inconsequential. Rockets launched routinely into space, braving the atmosphere that had obliterated probes before. The archives trembled at the implications. Every calculation had predicted extinction. Every simulation had confirmed it. Yet here were records of survival, organization, civilization, intelligence. The species name appeared with a quiet but undeniable gravity: humans.
The galaxy assumed these beings must be brutal conquerors, forged in unending war, a species that survived only through domination and bloodshed. But the archives revealed no such pattern. Wars existed, yes, but they were ephemeral, fleeting against the backdrop of innovation and rebuilding. Humanity was not monstrous. Humanity was adaptable. Adaptability. That trait alone had allowed them to master the impossible. They had taken a planet designed by chaos itself and shaped it into a cradle of learning, innovation, and survival.
Every extreme, gravity, storm, predator, pathogen, was met with solutions, workarounds, and inventions. Shelter, medicine, technology, social cohesion. Each catastrophe became a catalyst, each disaster a teacher. The footage replayed endlessly in the archives, ice sheets splitting under seismic force, predators chasing prey across frozen plains, rivers boiling and freezing in rapid succession, species struggling to survive every environmental swing. And yet, scattered among the chaos were signs of methodical life, fire-lit dwellings, farming terraces carved into mountainsides, tools refined over generations, rockets piercing the atmosphere in controlled arcs. Humankind had learned not merely to endure, but to thrive. As I studied these records, the deeper truth began to surface. Humans were not defined by brute strength or cunning alone. They were defined by their capacity to adapt, to evolve not merely over millennia, but over moments, crises, cycles, and calamities, to observe, to experiment, to fail, to rebuild, to turn the environment that would annihilate most species into a stage upon which they could perform acts of survival, ingenuity, and eventually mastery. It was terrifying, in the way only subtle, persistent danger can be, not because humans were violent, not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable, uncontainable, and utterly capable of overcoming challenges the galaxy assumed were absolute. I noted the simulations of previous probe failures, vessels destroyed by storms, instruments crushed under gravity, teams of analysts lost to diseases that had no cure. And yet humans built, rebuilt, and launched into the same conditions without hesitation. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They adapted. In that realization, a cold truth settled in my consciousness. Intelligence combined with adaptability is not merely evolution. It is the most dangerous force in the galaxy. A species that can learn faster than its environment can destroy it cannot be contained, predicted, or controlled. And Earth had given birth to exactly that species. The archives offered no warning in the traditional sense, no red alerts, no classification as a galactic threat, just facts, footage, and the persistent question that haunted every analyst who had ever studied the planet. How had life survived here at all? And then the answer crystallized. Life had not merely survived, it had flourished against impossible odds, under conditions that should have ended every cycle in annihilation. The galaxy had assumed the planet was a death world. Humanity had assumed it was home. I recorded this truth in the observer logs, noting each anomaly, each contradiction. Every calculation contradicted what was observable. Every model predicted extinction. Every expectation failed. And still, humans endured. For an alien mind trained to anticipate outcomes, to calculate probabilities, to expect failure when risk exceeded threshold, this was profound. Astonishing, and perhaps the first true hint that humans were a species that could not be measured by conventional logic. And yet, as the archive projections flickered across my vision, cities untouched by tidal waves, satellites whirring in the chaos of storms, humans walking calmly where predators hunted, an unsettling question emerged. If a species can thrive in the most hostile world the galaxy has ever cataloged, then what else might they survive? The simulations continued to play, looping catastrophe after catastrophe, and I realized with growing unease that understanding humans fully was not just a matter of curiosity, it was a matter of survival. The galaxy had assumed it knew the rules. Earth had proven it did not. And humanity was only beginning to demonstrate what that meant. The lecture hall was suffused with the low hum of anticipation and alien chatter, a sound that had become background white noise for centuries. Yet it stopped abruptly when the human cadet shifted in his seat. All sensors, all eyes, and all projections seemed to pivot toward him. The professor, a luminescent form of flowing neural filaments, blinked in disbelief, as though the human had activated a signal that bypassed the room's laws of expectation. At first, the professor assumed exaggeration. Perhaps the human misunderstood the lesson. Perhaps it was a miscommunication, a quirk of language. Maybe he had read the archives incorrectly. But then the human began to speak. Not loudly, not with flourish or bravado, just calmly, matter-of-factly, as if describing a childhood memory. I've walked through storm seasons that would tear cities apart. I've seen predators near our settlements, waiting. Alien cadets leaned forward, appendages trembling. The words were being spoken so casually, yet the implications were lethal. Entire planetary colonies, built carefully over decades, would have been annihilated by the challenges he listed, and yet here he was. One cadet, tentacles curling nervously, finally whispered the question that every being in the hall shared, but none dared voice. The human shrugged, a gesture so simple it seemed almost mundane. "We adapt," he said. The room froze. Every eye, every antenna, every neural interface registered the word. Adapt. The syllable resonated deeper than any projection, louder than any simulation, vibrating in the marrow of every cadet's cognition. Adaptation, the principle upon which evolution was built. But for most species, adaptation unfolded over millennia. Changes in physiology, behavior, or intellect occurred slowly, predictably, safely. Humanity, however, humanity had evolved under constant threat, where adaptation was neither optional nor gradual. Each generation faced its own catastrophe. Ice ages that could annihilate populations, famines that could starve entire regions, global conflicts that reshaped nations overnight, pandemics that tested every threshold of immunity.
And through each challenge, humans learned, observed, innovated, survived. The professor's bioluminescent form flickered in recognition and alarm. Slowly, the implications crystallized. Earth had not merely produced a species capable of survival, it had produced a species capable of solving the impossible, repeatedly, under conditions no other species could endure. Cadets shifted uneasily in their seats. Some tried to reconcile this calmly, attempting calculations and probabilities, only to find their models collapse under the weight of a single, simple truth. Humans didn't rely on perfect conditions to survive. They relied on themselves. The human continued, almost distractedly. We build shelters, create medicines, study the environment, find weaknesses, and exploit them. Every disaster teaches us something new. Every failure is temporary. Alien cadets' jaws, mandibles, exoskeletal plates, cartilage extensions, tightened. The words were terrifying not because they described violence, but because they described control over chaos. The human did not fear Earth. He understood it. He manipulated it. He anticipated it. Another cadet dared to speak. The human looked around, calm and precise. Normal is what you adapt to. If Earth had been any easier, we would have learned less. The professor's projections flickered, struggling to update as calculations failed. Simulations that had once guaranteed extinction no longer aligned with observation. Every statistical certainty, every archival warning, every predictive model, obsolete. The cadets could not yet grasp the full scope. For most species, survival in extreme environments is binary, succeed or perish. Humanity had rewritten the rules. They survived everything, and they thrived. They approached impossibility not as a test, but as an opportunity. The alien narrator in me, analyzing the scene, recorded the reactions: shock, disbelief, awe, fear, a creeping realization that the galaxy might have vastly underestimated the potential of a species that turned catastrophe into a classroom. And then the human leaned back, still calm, still unassuming, yet every fiber of his being radiated quiet certainty. No tremor in his voice, no hesitation in his gaze, just the matter-of-fact confidence of a species that had endured every conceivable threat and was still learning. The hall had been designed to demonstrate limits, to show the impossibility of survival on a world like Earth. Instead, it revealed something far more dangerous, a species unconstrained by environmental odds, a species that could, quite literally, survive anything. And as the projections of storms, predators, and disasters played across the hollow panels, it became painfully clear. This human was not an exception. He was the rule. The cadets, the professor, even my own observer consciousness, none of us yet understood the implications.
If a species can survive Earth, then the rest of the galaxy, with its supposedly lethal worlds, was perhaps less dangerous than anyone imagined. The lecture hall, once a place of instruction, became a chamber of revelation. The human had spoken, and the galaxy would never view survival the same way again. A chill ran through every cadet, a signal that this was no ordinary lesson. This was a warning, a demonstration, a prelude to understanding that the universe itself might have underestimated a species capable of adapting faster than death could strike. And as the humans' calm eyes scanned the room, one thought crystallized across every alien mind present. What else can they survive that we cannot even imagine? The Academy administration had grown uneasy. One cadet from Earth, or whatever they were calling human, had survived the lecture hall unscathed, defying centuries of archived probability. The council decreed it necessary. The anomaly must be tested. Not in theory, not in simulations, but in controlled environments designed to push every species beyond its limit. The testing chambers were colossal, their walls shimmering with adaptive force fields and gravity modifiers. Atmospheres could be tailored, storms summoned, predators simulated. No risk was spared. Alien cadets observed from behind transparent panels, whispering speculation in clicks, hums, and chittering tones. Most were certain the human would fail. Survival probability was infinitesimal. First came the gravity chamber. The field was tuned to Earth's peak, far beyond the tolerances of most species. Bones should have shattered, muscles should have torn. Yet the human walked calmly to the center, arms extended slightly for balance, and inhaled. His movements were deliberate, posture adjusted, breathing slowed. The cadet's sensors picked up every micro-adjustment, every subtle realignment. The human did not struggle, he adapted. Next, the freezing environment. Arctic winds cut through the chamber, ice forming midair, temperatures plummeting to levels that would kill most species in minutes. The human immediately scanned the chamber, gathering raw materials. He tore scraps of insulation, wrapped his body with precision, huddled strategically to conserve heat, and moved through the storm as if walking on a gentle spring breeze. The cadets shivered in unison. Survival was possible, but not like this, not so calm. Then came the predator simulations. Holographic beasts, sharp teeth, glinting claws, predatory intelligence, emerged from fog and shadows. Cadets whispered, expecting screams, panic, failure. Instead, the human observed. His eyes tracked movement patterns. He anticipated attacks, exploited weaknesses in stride and balance, avoided traps without hesitation. Every move was calculated, instinctive, yet controlled. He struck only when necessary, incapacitating threats with minimal effort. Indeed, the human's performance was not a matter of brute force, not speed, not intelligence in isolation. He was the sum of small advantages, calibrated perfectly. Each skill, each instinct, each learned response reinforced the next. Adaptability manifested as a living algorithm. Observe, test, react, improve. Even more unsettling, the calmness. Never a falter, never a rush of panic. While simulated predators lunged, storms roared, gravity crushed, the human moved through every scenario as if walking through a familiar street. Alien cadets, who had trained for decades in extreme environments, were awestruck. Every instinct screamed, this should not be survivable, and yet it was. The chambers rotated, blending multiple threats at once. Gravity fluctuated, storms raged, predators hunted. Oxygen levels fell, temperatures swung, seismic tremors shook the floors. The human recalibrated constantly. He crouched, balanced, ran, leapt, adapted, every movement measured and efficient. Each challenge became a lesson, each hazard a guide to the next step. Observers began to murmur about patterns, about probabilities collapsing in real time. They realized something profound and terrifying. Humans were not the strongest species. Not the fastest, not the most intelligent by conventional standards, yet they survived where others perished. They succeeded by combining traits in precise measure, leveraging adaptability in ways no single measure could predict. The alien narrator within me recorded every detail, the methodical gait, the deliberate use of environment, the calm assurance in a storm designed to erase entire species. Each success unraveled decades of expectation, forcing observers to reconsider the nature of survival itself. By the final chamber, the human had faced nearly every extreme Earth could produce. Gravity beyond tolerance, temperature spanning from molten heat to sub-zero death, predators intelligent enough to simulate hunting packs. And yet, the human had navigated all with an almost casual mastery. He paused only to observe, to adjust, to learn. For the alien audience, Earth's reputation began to shift. Once classified as a category Omega hazard, a death world, the planet's threats no longer seem insurmountable. Through the human, it was revealed as something else entirely. A crucible, a training ground, a laboratory in which the impossible became routine, and disaster became a teacher. The final holographic simulation flickered, a hurricane over a mountain, a pack of predators converging, gravity surging beyond tolerance, disease agents released. Cadets expected collapse. Expectation hung like a weight in the chamber. The human walked calmly into the center. He surveyed the scene, assessed the variables, and adjusted his stance. Every instinct, every skill, every learned pattern coalesced into seamless action. The simulated storm lashed, predators pounced, the ground trembled, but he moved through it all with the precision of a species that had practiced survival for millennia. The observers fell silent.
Calculations failed, models shattered, and in that silence, one truth emerged, clear as gravity itself. Humanity was not just enduring, humanity was mastering. And the implications were terrifying. Because mastery implied choice, adaptation implied growth, observation implied learning beyond prediction. A species that could navigate every extreme Earth presented could survive anywhere, perhaps anywhere the galaxy had ever deemed lethal. The cadets whispered in disbelief, their appendages trembling. Even the instructors, long seasoned in environmental extremes, stared in awe. The human's calm composure had rewritten the definition of survival in real time. And as the holographic predators lunged for what should have been a fatal strike, the human step-sided, leveraged, adapted, and smiled slightly. Not triumphantly, not arrogantly, simply knowingly. Earth, once considered a death world, no longer seemed impossible. For the aliens watching, it was becoming clear the planet's chaos was not a punishment, but a curriculum. And humanity was the teacher. The simulation ended, but the impression remained. A single thought echoed in every observer's mind. If a species can master Earth, what can it do in the rest of the galaxy? The room waited, stunned. And in that pause, a quiet, terrifying awareness settled. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and the true tests had only just begun. The Academy was in a state of quiet upheaval. Even those who had been present for centuries felt their perceptions bending, fracturing under the weight of human reality. The human cadet, calm and unassuming, had survived extreme environments that should have annihilated him. And yet, when asked about his life, he spoke of what humans called normal, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. I, observing from every angle, recorded every nuance. The words were simple, almost casual. Storms during childhood, weeks without electricity or shelter, predators near villages, quarantines against disease, natural disasters that destroyed homes, villages, and even cities. Alien cadets gasped collectively, their appendages quivered in disbelief. Survival thresholds for most species were measured in years of training or careful simulation. Humans experienced it as everyday existence. Then came the revelations about what humans deemed recreation. They voluntarily climbed mountains where oxygen thinned to levels that would suffocate most species in minutes. They dove into oceans so deep and pressurized that some alien species could not exist even in simulation. They launched themselves into space with controlled explosions, strapped to devices that could tear their bodies apart in fractions of a cycle. Every challenge was embraced, not with fear, but with intent, as if danger were a canvas on which to test themselves. Alien cadets whispered among themselves, horrified. These acts were not necessity, not survival. They were entertainment. And yet the cadet explained it with such matter-of-fact calm that it seemed ordinary. The realization began to dawn across the observation panels. Humans did not merely withstand danger, they approached it, they sought it, they courted it. Most species, evolutionary history had taught me, avoided peril. It was encoded in instinct. But humans, they turned danger into education, into a blueprint, into opportunity. The cadet spoke further. Danger forces us to innovate. Every threat teaches us something.
Every disaster becomes motivation to build something stronger: shelter, medicine, technology, community. We do not wait for the world to be safe. The alien observers, myself included, struggled to comprehend the psychology. How could a species treat threat as a tool rather than a punishment? How could the mind remain unbroken when the body faced repeated destruction? And yet, the cadet moved through the explanation as if describing the weather: routine, ordinary, unremarkable. Historical records played in the hollow archives behind me: fires consuming entire settlements, earthquakes cracking continents, floods swallowing lands. Humans rebuilt. They organized. They learned. They did not despair, did not hide, did not submit. Each challenge left them stronger, more capable, more adaptive. The psychological shock was compounded by the understanding that this process began in childhood. From the first moments, humans were immersed in danger, not as a horror, but as a teacher. They constructed shelter to survive storms, learned navigation and strategy to evade predators, innovated tools to manipulate their environment. And even their games reflected the same principle: simulated risk, controlled peril, lessons disguised as play. Alien cadets began to shift uneasily in their seats. Appendages trembled, antennae twitched. Observers whispered about instinctive recalculations. Their models of survival were collapsing. A species that voluntarily courted danger, that integrated disaster into routine, could not be measured using conventional logic. The cadet continued, his tone quiet, unassuming, yet filled with the weight of truth. Earth did not merely create survivors, it created problem solvers, species capable of facing the impossible, thinking through it, and emerging stronger. The words echoed through the chamber. Adaptation had once seemed remarkable because it allowed survival, but now I realized adaptation was not enough. Humans had evolved a culture of resilience. They did not simply endure challenges, they incorporated them into their identity, training, and even their joy. Every threat became a lesson, every disaster a laboratory. Simulations of human life, once mere data points, now felt like instruction manuals. Schools where children learned not just mathematics or history, but how to anticipate danger, how to act decisively in uncertainty, how to innovate in real time. Communities organized not just to exist, but to thrive under stress. Medicine developed not just to heal, but to prevent, to analyze, to anticipate. Technology evolved not merely for convenience, but for survival. The cadets, observing silently, began to whisper a single realization. Humans were not just survivors of their environment, they were architects of their own evolution. By deliberately confronting danger, by embedding challenge into every aspect of life, they had created a species capable of solving problems no simulation could fully anticipate. And I, alien observer, could only record in awe and a flicker of dread how utterly different this species was from all others cataloged in the archives. Where the galaxy species measured life in safety and stability, humans measured it in challenge, innovation, and the mastery of chaos. Earth had not merely produced survivors, it had produced thinkers, planners, builders, and adapters, all honed by the harshest crucible imaginable. And the realization settled: any encounter with humans could not be predicted, controlled, or contained. The lecture hall remained silent. The cadet's explanation lingered in the air, each word like a ripple across the minds of the aliens present. Survival was no longer the measure. Problem-solving was the measure. Adaptation was the proof. And as the human leaned back, calm, ordinary, and unafraid, I recorded one final note. The galaxy had underestimated not only the physical resilience of humans, but their very approach to life itself. What they called normal was a superpower, and that superpower would soon be on full display. The professor reclined, bioluminescent filaments dimming slightly as archival projections flickered to life behind him. Each frame depicted a world ravaged by extremes: famine, plague, fire, flood, war. And yet, amid the ruins, one constant emerged: humanity. The alien cadets watched in growing unease, appendages twitching nervously. Every image of devastation was met not with surrender, but with rebuilding, innovation, adaptation. Cities swallowed by rivers were reconstructed stronger and taller. Societies torn apart by conflict formed alliances to survive new threats.
Knowledge was harvested from failure, stored, codified, and passed to the next generation. I recorded it all, marveling at the scale of their resilience. Entire species on other worlds would have collapsed under half these conditions, yet humans pressed forward. They invented tools where none existed, medicine where disease threatened extinction, networks of communication where chaos had previously reigned. The first antibiotics emerged from desperate research in the face of disease that had claimed millions. Global cooperation arose from crises that had once seemed insurmountable. Rockets pierced the sky when planets and atmospheres conspired to keep them earthbound. Space stations became outposts, not luxury but necessity. Humanity converted catastrophe into progress. Each disaster became a catalyst, not for despair, but for refinement.
Instability, the galaxy feared, was lethal. Yet for humans, it was instructive. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, pandemics, floods, every instability honed their problem-solving instincts. While other species avoided volatile planets, humans thrived within them. The professor's projections shifted, displaying centuries of wars, famines, plagues, and natural disasters. Cadets whispered among themselves. They calculated probabilities and survival thresholds, only to find their models collapsing repeatedly. Every event that should have decimated a civilization instead produced innovation. Sanitation systems, global logistics, emergency response frameworks, communication networks, even early computerization, all born from necessity. I, as observer, noted the chilling revelation. The galaxy fears dangerous planets, yet humans come from one. Not just any dangerous planet, Earth. A crucible of extremes, gravity too strong, weather too violent, predators too numerous. And yet, from that very environment arose a species comfortable in conditions that terrify every other civilization. The implications spread through the academy like a silent storm. If humans could thrive under such chaos, then any world they approached, even when classified as lethal, was no longer predictable. Their tolerance for instability, for catastrophe, for disaster, had become a form of power. Survival was no longer the metric, mastery over adversity was. Cadets shivered, noting the contrast. Other species avoided extreme planets, fearing chaos. They deployed simulations, contingencies, and redundancies to survive even mild threats. Humans, by contrast, had been forged in the crucible itself. They did not merely survive disasters, they learned from them, improved because of them, and thrived where others would perish. Projections continued, showing humanity responding to crises in real time. When plagues swept continents, they studied pathogens, mapped genomes, and developed treatments faster than any alien civilization had predicted. When earthquakes leveled cities, they engineered structures that could withstand greater tremors. When conflict erupted, they formed alliances, institutions, and conventions to prevent recurrence. Each response was a testament to ingenuity and relentless adaptation. I noted the cadence of their evolution. Unlike other species, whose development plateaued once stability was achieved, humans continued to innovate precisely because instability never ceased. The challenges that might cripple a typical civilization instead accelerated human advancement. Chaos was a teacher, instability a mentor, danger a crucible. The professor turned to the cadets, his tone low and reverent. Observe closely. This is not luck, not chance. This is a species molded by adversity itself. They do not simply endure, they excel under pressure. Alien cadets shivered noticing. Antennae recoiled. Tentacles twitched.
Minds raced to calculate probabilities, but their equations failed at every turn. They realized a terrifying truth. Humans could not be measured by conventional metrics. Strength, speed, intelligence, these were insufficient. The measure was adaptability under extreme conditions. The variable that truly mattered? Resilience, amplified by experience, repeated and relentless over millennia. And then the most chilling realization struck. Humans come from Earth, a planet that terrifies every other civilization in the galaxy. Gravity far above average, unpredictable storms, predators and pathogens of impossible lethality. Most species would have abandoned such a world, avoided it, or perished attempting to live on it. Humans? They thrived. They normalized the extreme. They engineered it into routine. The galaxy's assumptions about survival were being rewritten in real time. The cadets' simulations of human weakness crumbled under historical evidence. Entire societies decimated, rebuilt, and stronger than before. Disasters that would have ended other civilizations, producing leaps in science, technology, and cooperation. A species that not only faced the impossible, but used it to fuel progress. I recorded each observation with a sense of awe and unease. Humanity was more than resilient. It was an organism of adaptation and innovation, honed in the harshest crucible imaginable. Its strength was invisible to conventional metrics, yet undeniable in consequence. The professor paused, and the cadets followed suit. Silence hung over the chamber. The projections flickered, showing humans walking through fire, storm, disease, and war, unchanged in purpose, relentless in will. And then the final truth settled over all observers. The galaxy fears dangerous planets. Humans come from one. Not merely a dangerous planet, a planet of extremes, a planet that should have destroyed intelligent life, a planet that instead produced a species comfortable operating where others are paralyzed by fear. The chamber remained silent. Cadets whispered. Calculators and probability models were abandoned as obsolete. And in that pause, one truth reverberated through every mind. Humans are not just survivors. They are forged in chaos. They are architects of progress born from catastrophe. The galaxy had underestimated them, and the realization sent a quiet tremor through the halls of the Academy. Any planet humans approached, even the most lethal, was now potentially theirs to master. The lecture had not just revealed resilience, it had revealed the terrifying truth of human strength, and the galaxy had yet to reckon with it. The lecture hall had emptied, leaving echoes of alien chatter bouncing off metallic walls, yet the reverberations of what had occurred extended far beyond the Academy itself. Reports, projections, and observer logs spread across communication networks, transmitted at faster-than-light speeds to every corner of the galaxy.
The human cadet's quiet words, his calm demonstration of adaptability, and the simulations of Earth's extremes became data points that would unsettle civilizations for centuries to come. Earth was no longer simply cataloged as a Category Omega hazard. The classification system, designed for clarity and caution, could not capture the magnitude of what had been revealed. Earth was reclassified, not merely a death world, not merely a crucible, a cradle of adaptive intelligence. Every storm, every predator, every disease, every natural disaster had become a forge for evolution, not only biological, but mental, technological, and cultural. Alien civilizations began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about survival. Entire fleets of colonization planners recalculated risk models. Councils of interstellar scientists convened emergency summits to discuss human adaptability. Simulations that had once predicted near-certain failure when exposed to extreme conditions were abandoned as obsolete. If a species could survive and thrive on Earth, then even the most dangerous planets in the galaxy might not pose an insurmountable threat. Humans were not feared because of aggression, not because they wielded superior weapons or brute strength. They were respected and quietly dreaded because of their capacity to endure. Observation logs emphasized this point repeatedly. Calm in the face of storms, methodical under predator attacks, inventive amid disaster, and relentless in the pursuit of solutions. Other species could speculate, simulate, and prepare. Humans simply acted, adapted, and advanced. Cadets from Earth began to appear in academies across the stars, each one quietly testing assumptions. Wherever they went, the same pattern emerged. Humans confronted danger with calm, studied instability as if it were a curriculum, and innovated solutions in real time. Alien cadets whispered in their own languages, recording data and recalculating probabilities. Across the galaxy, the same realization spread slowly but inevitably. If a species can survive Earth, then the rest of the galaxy may be far less dangerous than anyone had previously thought. The narrator, observing from the Academy archives, reflected on the subtle but profound change. The galaxy's perception of risk had shifted. Planets once labeled uninhabitable were now reconsidered. Extremes that had been feared became opportunities for study. Civilizations once cautious in exploration began to question their own caution. Survival was no longer solely a measure of skill or technology. It was a measure of adaptability, a trait humans had mastered above all else. In every colony, every research hub, every exploration fleet, humans became reference points, data points of resilience, standards of adaptability, proof that the universe could be navigated, mastered, and even tamed, not by avoidance, but by courage, ingenuity, and relentless persistence.
Even the most experienced alien instructors began altering their curricula. Lessons on planetary hazards now included examples of human problem-solving.
Tactics previously reserved for simulations were compared to human approaches. Entire branches of science began integrating adaptive theory as a necessary skill for survival, inspired by the species that had turned catastrophe into routine. And yet, humans themselves remained calm. They did not boast, they did not flaunt victory. In the eyes of the galaxy, their accomplishments were extraordinary. In their own minds, they were simply life. They faced challenges as part of existence, embracing every extreme, every threat, every instability, because to do otherwise was unthinkable. The narrator reflected on the subtle but terrifying truth. Human strength was invisible to conventional metrics. They were not the fastest, nor the strongest, nor the most intelligent in isolation. Their genius lay in synthesis, adapting rapidly, learning constantly, and thriving where other species faltered. Humanity was a lens through which the galaxy could reassess its understanding of life, survival, and potential. Reports showed alien cadets, previously confident, recalibrating their assumptions. Simulations once considered safe now seemed inadequate. Training protocols were rewritten to account for humans as benchmarks rather than anomalies. The realization spread slowly, inexorably. Survival was not guaranteed by preparation alone. It was guaranteed by the ability to change, to adapt, and to endure against all odds. Earth, once feared as a death world, had revealed a fundamental truth. Danger could breed intelligence. Chaos could breed capability. Instability could breed progress. And humans, molded by every conceivable extreme, embodied this principle better than any species in recorded history. The narrator observed in quiet awe as humans moved through the galaxy. Small cadets in distant academies, explorers on foreign worlds, scientists in orbiting laboratories. Everywhere they went, they left subtle lessons. Calm in crisis, methodical in chaos, inventive amid impossibility. Every alien observing them began to record, to learn, to wonder. The galaxy, vast and ancient, had underestimated one species for centuries. But now, that perception was shifting. Every calculation had to be reevaluated, every assumption tested, every expectation challenged. The human example had rewritten the rules of survival. And in the quiet of observation, one final truth emerged. The galaxy feared planets, feared storms, feared predators and gravity and disease. Humans feared nothing of the sort. They feared only stagnation. And for that reason, they were unstoppable. The lecture hall had ended, but its lesson, recorded and transmitted, resonated far beyond.
The galaxy now had a new model for intelligence, resilience, and mastery. A species forged in extremes, comfortable where others faltered, capable of enduring conditions that terrified all others. Earth was no longer a death world. It was a cradle of adaptive intelligence, and humanity had become the standard by which the galaxy would measure survival, innovation, and courage. The cadets had witnessed one human. The galaxy was about to witness many more. And everywhere humans went, the lesson echoed quietly but insistently. Survive Earth, and you can survive anything. Years had passed since the lecture hall revelation, since the human cadet had quietly defied every expectation, every simulation, every probability the galaxy had assigned to his species. I, the observer, finally received permission to visit Earth, to witness the planet directly rather than through probes or archives. My sensors were tuned, my algorithms prepared. I expected chaos, I expected ruin, I expected the planet's lethal reputation to manifest in the very air, in every violent storm, every predator, every violent tectonic tremor. But what I found was nothing like the simulations, nothing like the archives had prepared me for. Cities stretched across continents, organized and alive. Streets thrummed with energy, not fear. Vehicles navigated precisely despite chaotic environments. In marketplaces, beings of all sizes and shapes, humans, moved with purpose, laughing, arguing, creating. Children played under skies that had once been described in the archives as apocalyptic, dodging shadows that had toppled empires in simulations. Laughter echoed where destruction should have reigned. Creativity bloomed amid mountains, rivers, and plains that should have crushed civilizations long ago. Humans did not merely survive Earth, they lived. I wandered among them, recording every detail,
my mind recalculating everything I had thought I knew about survival, resilience, and intelligence. Structures once considered impossible to sustain in violent storms stood firm, built from materials and designs that reflected generations of adaptation. Fields that should have been barren due to earthquakes and flooding were cultivated, yielding sustenance and beauty. Communities thrived not despite the planet's violence, but because of it, having learned to harness its lessons, to integrate its unpredictability into life itself. And then I saw it, the secret, the quiet force behind the human species' resilience. It was not strength alone, it was not intelligence alone, it was not even adaptation, though that was remarkable. It was hope. Humans endured disasters not because they were fearless. They feared, they suffered, they mourned. And yet each time they rebuilt, they adapted, they learned, they moved forward, driven by a simple, profound belief. Tomorrow could always be better.
That belief manifested in every invention, every reconstruction, every moment of perseverance, from the smallest child learning to navigate danger to the tallest skyscraper weathering storms centuries old. I recorded this, carefully, methodically, for the Galactic Archives. Hope, the driving force behind resilience, the lens through which humans converted catastrophe into opportunity, disaster into lesson, impossibility into achievement. It was a principle alien civilizations had not fully understood, yet it was the axis upon which human survival turned. The skies, once described as lethal in the archives, now seemed benign. Storms still raged, gravity still pressed, predators still prowled the forests and oceans. But humans, as I observed them, did not cower. They adjusted, they innovated, they celebrated, they lived. And in living, they taught an entire galaxy that survival is not merely enduring force, it is enduring purpose. As I stood beneath Earth's sky, sensors recording every nuance of light, air, and sound, I realized that if the galaxy ever faced extinction-level threats, one species stood out. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but the species born on the most impossible world. The species that had learned to thrive where others would perish. Humans. I recorded the final entry for the Galactic Archives. If a civilization wishes to endure the impossible, look to Earth. Look to the species that transforms catastrophe into curriculum, disaster into innovation, and fear into hope. Their strength is invisible to conventional metrics, yet undeniable in consequence. They are adaptable, resilient, inventive, and courageous beyond measure. And most importantly, they endure not because they must, but because they believe in a better tomorrow. A human child laughed nearby, chasing a rolling sphere through puddles left by the last storm. I watched as a community repaired a bridge, not hurriedly or out of fear, but with pride and cooperation. I saw art, music, conversation, invention, all thriving under conditions the galaxy had deemed lethal. And I understood. Earth had not merely produced survivors, it had produced a species capable of teaching the galaxy a lesson in resilience, hope, and the enduring human spirit. The galaxy was fortunate that this species chose cooperation, friendship, and diplomacy over conquest. Fortunate that their adaptability was paired with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Fortunate that the humans' greatest power, their enduring hope, was shared, not hoarded. As I concluded my observations and prepared to leave, I reflected on the irony. The world most feared, the world most chaotic, had given birth to the species most capable of surviving any threat. Humans were a living testament to the idea that the impossible is merely a challenge waiting to be mastered. And for the first time, I realized the full scale of their legacy. Across the galaxy, extinction-level threats would no longer appear insurmountable.
Not because the universe had changed, but because humans had shown the galaxy a path through them, measured, thoughtful, adaptive, and always, always hopeful. Humans endure. They live. They teach. They inspire. And the galaxy is immeasurably fortunate they chose to become friends.